Hey there, everybody. What's good, streaming people? Tommy Tran, Danny Kanell here in our Fort Lauderdale studio, CBS Sports HQ, taking you through the mock draft first round. We're going all the way, and we're going to bring in our draft analyst, Ryan Wilson, to bring him in the conversation as well. And we're going to kind of keep things moving. So, Arda, take us through the first 10 picks, meaning 32 down, and kind of give us the Cliff Notes version of what stands out to you.
All right, Tommy T, let's do it. At number 32 is Paulson Adebo out of Stanford. He is a long, athletic cornerback. He's going to the Ravens. He actually had a tough season this year. They can always stand to have more defensive backs. Jimmy Smith's in the final year of his deal. At number 31, the 49ers take Grant Delpit, the safety out of LSU. I've often had Xavier McKinney out of Alabama going here. Delpit's slightly better. That could change during the pre-draft process. Not a great season for Delpit, but an extremely athletic guy to watch there. Jalen Reagor at number 30. This guy is electric, Tommy. He is going to fit in there right in the slot along with those big wide receivers. He's a smallish guy, can do everything you want. Aaron Rodgers would absolutely love that. And then next at 29, we have Kenny Murray out of Oklahoma. Crazy athletic linebacker, sideline to sideline guy. He has to get better in coverage, hasn't done a lot of it, but he can do everything. The type of linebackers we see in today's NFL. Number 28, Clavon Chaisson out of LSU, the edge rusher going to Seattle. They drafted L.J. Collier last year. He hasn't really done much, hasn't played a lot. Jadeveon Clowney can't do it by himself. Chaisson helps there. At number 27, the Dolphins' third first-round pick. I have him taking Austin Jackson out of USC. Crazy athletic left tackle. He might return to USC. If he comes out, NFL teams will be very, very interested because of that athleticism. Really good season this year. 26, A.J. Terrell, cornerback out of Clemson, is going to the Vikings. We know Xavier Rhodes has struggled. We know Mike Zimmer loves athletic cornerbacks. A.J. Terrell is big and strong. Played opposite Trayvon Mullen last year, who was a second-round pick of the Raiders. At number 25, Christian Fulton, cornerback out of LSU. He would be CB1 probably in the summertime. Had a good season, not a great season, but a really good season. And we know that the Titans defense always looking for cornerbacks. Fulton makes sense there. At number 24, Laviska Shenault out of Colorado. The big issue with Laviska is health. And the second biggest issue is we'll have to see how fast he runs. But if he runs well and he's healthy, he is Anquan Boldin, but maybe better. I don't want to diss Anquan Boldin because he's a fantastic player. Imagine him in New Orleans offense with Drew Brees there. And finally at 23, a little nod to Brady Quinn. Cole Kmet just announced he was coming to the NFL. He reminds me of Kyle Rudolph. Guess what the Patriots need? They need a tight end. Gronk is gone. There was some conversation. They were thinking about trading for Kyle Rudolph early in the season. They feel this need here at pick 23, Tommy T.
All right, we saw Cole Kmet have a really nice day against Georgia in that primetime game early on in the year. Danny, real quickly, out of those 10 picks, anything stand out to you?
Bunch of LSU players in there. Grant Delpit, I'm not in love with. Ryan echoed the thought about the season he had wasn't that great. The potential is clearly there. I think it'll be interesting to see if him or McKinney goes in that first-round spot. And then also Clavon Chaisson going to the Seahawks. Love them fit there with Pete Carroll's defense, how he scheme fits there. And then the Laviska Shenault going to New Orleans, and Ryan alluded to it. He's a bigger guy. He's not like one of these smaller, fast, twitchy guys. He's 6'2", but he's 220, so he's up there. He can play physical out there, and I think Drew Brees would have a field day. We all know the type of year that Michael Thomas had, but they need sort of a complementary piece to him, so I love that fit in New Orleans for Shenault.
All right, so we saw a handful of wide receivers, and we're still going to talk about even more in this first round. It's different than what we saw last year where we were waiting for maybe that first-round guy to come through in terms of the wide receiver position. So interesting you bring up Laviska Shenault because there's a conversation we'll talk about number 22, the Buffalo Bills here, with an option to go at wide receiver. Maybe it was Shenault. Now Ryan has it going somewhere else, and it's T. Higgins out of Clemson. What do you think?
I would lean T. Higgins as well. I'm a fan of the really tall, lanky, long receivers who, oh, by the way, can also run and have exceptional hands. And you've seen him showcase his skill set over the last couple seasons. And I think that'll continue. I think he's going to have a massive game in the national championship game as well. For Josh Allen, who has struggled somewhat with accuracy, the receivers that he's throwing to, Cole Beasley on the inside, John Brown on the outside, they're speedier guys who are really good route runners. So you have to be extremely accurate with the football. With a guy like T. Higgins, you get a little bit more forgiveness because of the catch radius that he got. Just give it in his direction, and he can make plays for you. So I love this fit here for Buffalo.
Yeah, Danny nailed it. He hit on all and he said it more nicely than I will have. I love John Brown and Cole Beasley. Average height of that wide receiver group is about 4'8". So you need a tall guy out there. We know Josh Allen sometimes struggles with with accuracy. This is a big catch radius, high point catch guy, throwing bombs up there. Let Josh Allen do that. And you saw him actually lean on Dawson Knox a little more towards the end of the season. He's a bigger tight end at 6'4", and I think that's exactly what this offense needs to add one more different type of playmaker down the field to go along with John Brown.
With everything you guys said, I tweeted this out during the playoff game. Again, we have a lot of comparisons with Josh Allen and Cam Newton. This could be Josh Allen's sort of Kelvin Benjamin. Again, a big guy, and you can have those accuracy issues and be able to forgive a little bit there. All right, how about pick number 21, R-Dub? Who you got there?
Got Julian Okwara going to the Eagles. He's a crazy athletic edge rusher. He broke his fibula in November. He'll be healthy this spring, ready to go. Brandon Graham is 31 years old. Vinny Curry is in the final year of his deal. Those are the two most efficient pass rushers. Bring more athleticism off the edge, and Okwara makes sense there, Tommy.
All right, quickly through here. Now we talk about 20 and 19, the quarterback portion here. It's really interesting. Why don't, Ryan, you deliver two? Jordan Love first, and then Justin Herbert here with these two selections.
So at number 20, I have Jordan Love out of Utah State. I have him going to the Jaguars. And here's my thinking. I know Pete Prisco was not happy about this. Doug Marrone has basically 1 year left on his deal. His thinking is, look, I'll take a super athletic quarterback. It'll buy me a little more time if we struggle next year. Look, he is not a first-round pick based on his 2019 tape. He had a tough season. I'll grant you that. But the athleticism will blow your mind. He's going to be the Senior Bowl. Also joining him at the Senior Bowl at pick number 19, Justin Herbert just announced that on Tuesday. He needs to go to the Senior Bowl. Another guy with crazy off-the-charts athleticism, athletic traits that NFL teams love, but the consistency wasn't there. John Gruden is a guy who falls in love with big-arm quarterbacks. We'll see if that happens. I'll be interested to see what Danny thinks about those two picks.
I'm with you on Jordan Love. So I know his 2019 tape is rough, but if you go put in his 2018 tape when he had 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, he sort of jumps out at you, which is why he kind of came into this season with some hype. And then it was underwhelming, but he didn't have his coaching staff. Like, you get a change there, and that's tough to overcome a lot of times. So I'm in agreement. Like, if you're a Gardner Minshew fan, that's great. Maybe he's the future. I think they'd be great, Jacksonville would, to move on from Nick Foles, get something in return trade-wise, and then bring in Jordan Love, have him compete with Gardner Minshew. A couple quarterbacks you get on the cheap on their rookie deals where you don't have to invest that much before the new CBA kicks in. I'm for it. The one thing I think that possibly could be an issue for Jordan Love is some concerns, maturity, character, whatever you want to call it. And wherever you stand on, marijuana issues in our society, this is not a moral issue. For me, it's an IQ test. And when you have issues and run-ins with the law right before your bowl game, that to me is a red flag. And I guarantee you, coaches will have the same thought. Again, they don't care what you do in your free time. It's being able to just stay out of trouble. And that slip up that he had this December will be something that coaches will want to have a really strong answer from him, and hopefully he gives it to them. But I think it's going to be one of those risk-reward type of tapes. With Justin Herbert, I think he's this raw talent, big physical guy. I'm a little bit concerned about the offense that he ran at Oregon and how much of a development is he going to be, how much of a project. You see the 64% completion percentage, but they ran a lot of bubble screens, passes behind the line of scrimmage. I don't see him being a guy who just steps in and just gets it. It's going to be a project to get him up to speed with NFL concepts and reading out defenses and moving the ball downfield. The physical, like when he gets out there at the combine and he gets in front of the Senior Bowl, they're going to fall in love with him. I just want to see how does he develop as far as football IQ and absorbing an NFL playbook and executing it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with Justin Herbert. Right now, again, Ryan has him going to the Raiders, and you imagine that Derek Carr for at least a year, but that John Gruden playbook is not going to be easy. We've seen even a guy like Derek Carr, who's had a couple years and a few years under his belt, try to absorb that playbook and then execute the way that John Gruden wants it to be. All right, that's pick 20 and pick 19. Moving on to pick number 18, the Dolphins and Terrell Lewis out of Alabama, Ryan. So you're having them, Brian Flores, get a defensive guy and some help there.
Yeah, their defensive line struggled this year. We know they drafted Christian Wilkins on the inside. Terrell Lewis is an edge rusher. Missed the previous 2 seasons with injuries, ACL in 2018, upper body injury the year before that. Healthy all this in 2019. That's exactly what NFL teams wanted to see. He's an athletic freak, and the fact that he's healthy is a huge plus. I think the Dolphins rank 32nd in pass rush according to Football Outsiders, and they obviously need to fix that, along with many other things. But Terrell Lewis is their edge rusher, and they get him just in the middle of the first round here, Tommy.
All right, number 17, the Cowboys, Henry Ruggs III. Danny, potentially a replacement for Amari Cooper down the line?
It sure feels like that, too. And of the Bama wide receivers that were so prolific this season, this might be the fastest one that's out there. So Mike McCarthy's system is going to love this. Again, some of it is just the business of the NFL. Who knows Amari Cooper's contract, what's going to happen there? This would put some pressure on him and maybe possibly an exit for him to go somewhere else for that big payday. But I'm telling you, this could be the value play of the Bama wide receivers, kind of the sleeper pick of them. And I know we're still talking about a first-round talent, but all the attention is going to be on Jerry Jeudy. Henry Ruggs is going to be somebody's weapon out there, and maybe it's Dak Prescott, who would love to see this pick.
Yeah, there was some conversation Henry Ruggs might return to Alabama. He just announced earlier this week that he's coming out, so that's great news for NFL teams. And here's the thing, Tommy and Danny, even if Amari comes back, you still take Henry Ruggs here because you're that much more explosive. This offense should have been off the charts in 2019. They were up and down. I feel like Ruggs gives them another deep threat. They could use a tight end, but I don't think you're going to take one this high. Henry Ruggs could end up going higher than this, but he is, as Danny pointed out, a burner. And there's conversation, and this sounds crazy, that we're talking about low 4.3s at the combine.
Sheesh.
At number 16, the Atlanta Falcons, R-Dub has C.J. Anderson out of Florida, the defensive back going there to the ATL. What more can you tell us about that decision?
Long, physical. He's bigger than he looks. He's listed about 192. He looks a little slender when you watch him on tape. But that's exactly what the Falcons need. They need more help in that defense. He didn't have an outstanding 2019. He had a good 2019, but he had a much better 2018. But if you're long-armed, can run, can get in and out of breaks, NFL teams take notice, and C.J. Henderson is going to be a first-round pick, I feel like, Tommy.
All right, moving on to 15, we're talking about the Broncos, and here's the Jeudy, as we talked about it, and then the CeeDee Lamb conversation. For now, it's going to be Jerry Jeudy patching up with Cortland Sutton and company. We'll have to see what the quarterback situation's like. Danny, what do you like?
If it is Drew Lock, he's got to be loving this pick, a weapon for him to work with. I'll give you a comp that I see, and I think it's about the biggest compliment you could play. Similarities to DeAndre Hopkins in Houston, what he did coming out of Clemson and been such a dominant receiver there in the NFL. He's an exceptional route runner. The speed is there. The hands are there. I love this pick.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, people on Twitter will yell and scream that there's no way he lasts till 15. And here's the only explanation I have, because he is a fantastic talent. No one denies that. I think this wide receiver class is so incredibly deep that it's going to get pushed down because teams have other needs higher up the board. And that's why I see him possibly falling to 15. So Danny mentioned Drew Lock being excited. Cortland Sutton's going to be excited. Noah Fant's going to be excited. Phillip Lindsay. This offense could be off the charts good. And again, you have two offensive weapons on the outside. It does immeasurably incredible things for your quarterback. We were talking about Josh Allen, for example. So I think Drew Lock would be equally as happy, if not more so, than what Josh Allen got in T. Higgins.
All right, Ryan. So using that logic, take me through 14 to 10. It looks like every team in that selection process has at least a wide receiver. Let's go 14 down to 10 for us.
All right, 14 is Yetur Gross-Matos out of Penn State. He's going to Tampa Bay. Ndamukong Suh and JPP are in the final year of their deals. He is a thick edge rusher, raw, but he's going to get better with experience, so he could be a middle of the first round guy there. The Colts at number 13 are taking Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina. He thought about coming out last year. He would have been in the first round conversation. He improved his stock by returning to South Carolina. He might be the best pass rushing interior defensive lineman in this draft class. At number 12, we have the Raiders with their first round pick, taking my guy, CeeDee Lamb. You might wonder why I have CeeDee over Jerry Jeudy. It's a very close. It's 1 and 1A. CeeDee Lamb was just so incredibly explosive from the first game to the last game for Oklahoma. He's listed about 187. I think he's pound for pound the strongest wide receiver in this draft class. I love everything about his game. At number 11, we have Trevon Diggs going to the Jets. Yes, the Jets defense was much better under Greg Williams, but 3 of their top 5 defensive backs, according to Football Outsiders, are in the final year of their deal. So Trevon Diggs, Stephon Diggs' brother, he can play the ball. He is physical. He is big. He's fast. He's going to the Jets at number 11. And at number 10, the Browns need help. Not very many places, if we're being honest. They need a coach, obviously, but they need help along the offensive line. Tristan Wirfs is an absolute man. He can play right tackle. He's helped out at left tackle, so he's versatile, and he is a really good player you can pencil in for the next 10 years in Cleveland. Who knows how many coaches they will have in that time.
Wow, the Las Vegas Raiders potentially with Justin Herbert and CeeDee Lamb. That's a nice pairing there for the future. All right, number 9, you got the Jags. Another Iowa guy, A.J. Epinesa, headed there.
Yeah, I like A.J. Epinesa a lot. Came out in his bowl game, so he punctuated the 2019 season with 2.5 sacks and a forced fumble against USC. He is thick. He is built like J.J. Watt. I'm not saying he is J.J. Watt, but he looks like him walking down the street. He can play outside, and the good news is he can kick inside. He played a number of snaps inside for Iowa. Calais Campbell has one more year in his deal. Ngakoue is done with his deal. He may come back. He may not. We'll see what happens there. But Epinesa offers some versatility there at number 9, Tommy.
Yeah, we talked about the Jags just a couple years ago. Defense, their calling card. But Ardub and I have been talking about it. They have a lot of needs now moving forward, even though Doug Marrone's sticking around there. Number 8, the Cardinals with Isaiah Simmons, the outstanding linebacker out of Clemson. What stands out to you about this prospect?
Same thing that does to me every Clemson player almost across the board, the length. He's 6'3", and might even be a tad bit taller than that. I just saw him out in Phoenix at the Fiesta Bowl. Big, long, lanky, and yet he can run. He's a linebacker who can cover wide receivers. He really is built to play defense in today's NFL. The way we're seeing these offenses change and evolve, he is the next phase of linebacker type player that you'll see. He's a great player, and I also think this would be great for Arizona. We saw the Raiders last year select Clemson and Alabama players, championship caliber players. Arizona needs to change their culture and to start believing they can win. So you take a player from a dynastic program, the way Clemson has been. Love this selection.
This guy lines up virtually everywhere. He plays deep safety. He plays out in the slot. Danny mentioned he plays linebacker. You don't know where he's going to be. If you're a quarterback, this is the first guy you're trying to find, and half the time you can't find him. He reminds me of a bigger version of the versatility Derwin James offers in Los Angeles for the Chargers. And I think the Cardinals' defense, as Danny alluded to, needs to get a lot better. Why not take a guy that can play just about every position?
All right, so let's move on to 7 and 6. The Panthers, Ryan, you have taking Jeff Okudah out of Ohio State. We talked a little bit about Jeff. I actually want to focus on then Derek Brown out of Auburn. And we look at the number 6 pick going with the Chargers. What are the chances Derek Brown is your top interior defensive lineman in this draft?
100%. He could go higher than 6, Tommy. We'll have to see what shakes out above in the draft above them. But he is an absolute man. He shows up game after game. People were surprised he didn't come out last year. That's how good he was, and he continued that and then some this year. He actually had a really good game against LSU, one of the few teams to actually pressure Joe Burrow on a relatively regular basis. I love this pick. I think the Chargers would love this pick, even though they took Jerry Tillery last year in the first round. All
right, Derek Brown and that outstanding Tiger defensive line this year. We saw that play out many games on the SEC on CBS. All right, here we go. Top 5, guys. And at number 5, now that we have some clarity, Tua Tagovailoa is going to go pro, and right now Ryan has him going to the Dolphins. It's almost like the tanking for Tua thing still worked out, right?
It absolutely did. Here's what I would evaluate the Tua Tagovailoa selection, no matter who he ends up going to. If it's Miami, great. I think it is probably one of the biggest risk versus reward picks maybe in the last decade that we've seen, because I do think there is legitimate concern of his health. He's had both ankles operated on. He had this massive hip injury and surgery and rehab that he's going to be going through now. There is a great unknown, and part of the evaluation process of when you're evaluating franchise quarterbacks is, can you stay healthy for 16 games and for playoff runs? And I think that is very much a question mark. But here's where the reward comes in. You were talking about a special talent as far as throwing the football IQ, knowing where to go with it, almost having a sixth sense of throwing guys open. So that is going to draw teams in like the Miami Dolphins, but I do think it does come with risk. And I also think this could be a great situation for him. If they bring back Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think that is the perfect mentor for Tua. Ryan's not going to feel threatened at all. He knows his role on that team, and it could allow Tua the time to be patient and get fully healthy before he was inserted into the lineup.
Yeah, Danny's exactly right. And it could even be a case that we're looking at a 2020 redshirt year for Tua. The big question, and Danny's talking about it right now, is that what are the doctors going to say about this hip? Because we don't know. I don't think Tua can throw for another 6 to 8 weeks. So we saw him walking around on the crutch at the bowl game against Michigan. There are a lot of unanswered questions physically about what he can do. But if he's 95% of what he was, say in 2021, you're taking him at number 5, and there's going to be some competition for teams jumping up ahead of you at number 5 to try to grab Tua, because he is an amazing talent. And if not for Joe Burrow's season this year, he would probably be the number 1 pick right now, given his announcement a few days ago that he is intending to go to the NFL, Tommy.
So everything that we talked about, what's nice about the NFL now is sort of the pay structure for rookies have been set out. So you're not having to go whether it's pick 5 or pick 1. Again, Danny, this is a Miami Dolphins team that's not very good. They were basically trying to tank and then played well at the end of the year. Can they afford to kind of take a pick like Tua, redshirt him, and still be competitive and try to build a winning team?
If Ryan Fitzpatrick comes back, 100%. I thought Brian Flores did maybe one of the best coaching jobs in the NFL. I know their record didn't bear out. When you look at the lack of talent on that roster, they're going to be better next season. And I think Ryan Fitzpatrick proved more than capable of winning games for this team. So I would actually prefer that to be the case if Tua did get to sit out. And so there are absolutely zero questions. But he's shown, as he did this season when he had the tightrope procedure on his ankle, he's a pretty fast healer. He came back in just 3 weeks. But this is a dramatically different, more complex, more serious injury than what he had on his ankle.
All right, let's go to 4 and 3. You got the Giants and Lions both fighting for offensive line protection for their quarterbacks, Ryan. So when you look at an Andrew Thomas or a Jedrick Wills, how close to the gap is there, much like the wide receiver debate?
It's pretty close. Jedrick Wills has made quite a push for himself in the 2019 season. I talked to scouts that absolutely love him. Loved him so much more than left tackle Alex Leatherwood for that Alabama team. And at one point, I thought they were pretty close. But Andrew Thomas he replaced Isaiah Wynn a few years ago. He can play right and left tackle. He's played primarily left tackle at Georgia. We know he's protected Jake Fromm and done it at a high level. And in New York for the Giants, he would protect Daniel Jones, who had 18 fumbles, and that obviously has to change. And number 3, I've had the Lions taking defensive players. I mentioned Derek Brown earlier, and I know this gets the Lions fans fired up that I have them taking Jedrick Wills, primarily because they haven't heard a lot about him. But they need help at right tackle, and Matthew Stafford, another guy, he has to stay healthy, and adding Jedrick Wills certainly helps that. And I think Wills is going to be a guy that impresses a lot of people once they learn more about him.
All right, so the SEC flexing its muscles there with 3 and 4. Moving on to the top 2, we're down to 2 guys. So as we look at number 2, the Washington Redskins will have a new head coach in Ron Rivera, and we all think that you have them right now pinned to take Chase Young. Danny, it's really 2 positions, right? It's like quarterback and defensive lineman in terms of like transformational prospects. So the Chase Young sort of a roller coaster of hype. Where do you sit there with the number 2 overall pick in him?
So he's taken a little bit of criticism for his lack of presence in the game versus Michigan. Wisconsin, he played okay, and then the playoff didn't do much. I would put that more on the offense's game plans. They were specifically scheming up, saying, you know what? If there's one player we're not going to let beat us, it's going to be Chase Young, which it may not show up in the box score in the stat column, but that shows up when other players are freed up because you're having to double team and you're spending so much focus on Chase Young. Physically, what he's been able to do, he still had 16.5 sacks despite missing 2 games. He is that difference maker type player like we've seen in other guys, the Bosa brothers, like Myles Garrett, like Jadeveon Clowney, like other first, top 2 or 3 picks. He is going to be that much of an automatic selection. I do think there's some concern about, hey, why did he still disappear in those games? But I would chalk those up to schemes that the opponents had for him.
I'm glad Danny mentioned those 3 games and the schemes, because here's the thing. You can do that in college to some degree. You can't do that in the NFL. So you can try to triple team Chase Young if you want to. It ain't going to work at the next level. I think he has a chance to be better than the Bosa brothers. That's how good I think he is, what kind of a transcendent talent he could possibly be. And I want to put this question to you guys, Danny and Tommy. If you're the Redskins, are you answering the phone if someone calls and wants to trade up to number 2?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't think so. I think that defense needs this type of player, and I think he's the closest thing to a sure thing. Yes, I mean, here's the other thing too, Ryan. There is a human nature aspect. Yes, they're game planning for him, and I heard some even Ohio State fans saying, well, the effort wasn't there. I was there, saw him get really close to a couple sacks, and I think it's totally okay in today's environment if a player does protect himself somewhat from the potential $25 million payday that he's going to be afforded in just a few months. It's human nature. I don't fault somebody for that. I think that's absolutely within the realm of possibility of maybe some reason why Chase Young disappeared a little bit in those last 3 games. But when he turns it on and when he wants to, maybe when he actually gets paid to play, I think he's close to unblockable. So I would say the Redskins, of course, they'll listen if somebody offered something off the charts.
Yeah.
You would maybe listen and maybe take it. But as far as sticking with Chase Young, I would stick with him.
That's what I think. I think outside of a Godfather-type deal, I think Ron Rivera, being a defensive guy, has a good look at Chase Young. And if he buys into everything that we talked about, it'd be hard for them to pass that up. And it leads now to number one, and of course the Bengals, and a guy that's going to be playing in the national championship, and that's Joe Burrow. I'm going to start with our quarterback first, Danny. Obviously, it's interesting because I made this point earlier about, remember when Joe Burrow 2 seasons ago, LSU's at Auburn, can he manage the game, let alone win the game? He did that, and then he has this transformational 2019 season. So when you look at this, and I don't want to say one-hit wonder, one-year wonder, but what do you see when you see Joe Burrow?
Well, I mean, it's more than a one-hit wonder. It's not like it's just undersell. Like, he had one of the best seasons in college football, and yet you bring up a really good point, Tommy. Last year, he was a game manager. He was a 57% completion percentage player who wasn't asked to do too much with the offense. Hardly had any 300-yard passing games. And then this year, he becomes one of the most prolific passers in the history of college football. And I don't think I've seen a player in recent memory step up on the big stage and continue to deliver big-time throws time and time and time again, whether it's throwing from the pocket, reading things out, whether it's improvisational skills and getting outside of the pocket and making plays. I mean, this is an automatic take him number one. I do think because this is what we do. We'll nitpick and we'll look at things, we'll question it. It'll be, all right, can he sustain this level of play without Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator who opened up this playbook? And, can he do this without the receiving talent that he had? That's a valid question. But as far as what you've seen this year, you have to take him number one if you're Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. If the Bengals mess this up, they should be banned from the league, and no questions asked about it. Joe Burrow, people ask me, okay, which game should I watch to get an idea of who? I said, pick a game. Any game you watch with Joe Burrow will blow your mind. And if you want to just skip to the end, go to the Oklahoma game and watch this guy throw 7 touchdowns and score another one before halftime. If Justin Herbert or Jordan Love had that game that Burrow had against Oklahoma over the span of 3 or 4 games, we'd be talking about them as top 10 picks. That's how good Joe Burrow's been. And Danny talked about it. It sort of came out of nowhere. If Joe Burrow had declared last year, we would all laugh and watch him go undrafted. He was probably a day 3 guy coming into the 2019 season, and he started strong, and he got stronger as the season progressed. This is a perfect situation if you're Cincinnati. And by the way, the Bengals were terrible this year. No one doubts that. But they'll be better. They have Joe Mixon. They have Tyler Boyd. A.J. Green, if he gets healthy, he'll be back. And, oh, by the way, they're going to have 2 first-round picks this year, basically, because Jonah Williams, who didn't play last year, their left tackle, is going to be healthy. So they have a chance to make some noise and certainly do better than a 2-win team and perhaps get back in the mix in the AFC North, win 6-7 games, and have a head start on 2020.
Ooh, a record completion percentage. We saw him run the football a little bit, too, this year. Very enticing for NFL prospects in terms of scouts and ownership. Our thanks to Ryan Wilson. Catch him on CBSSports.com with latest mocks, as well as the Pick 6 pod. And our thanks to Danny Kanell here. Great stuff as always, guys. Thank you.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.